In the gleaming lobby of Sterling Tower, where million-dollar deals are sealed with a handshake and fortunes are made before lunch, billionaire Marcus Sterling is about to make the biggest mistake of his life. A coffee stain, a moment of uncontrolled rage, a janitor's quiet dignity. What happens next will shatter everything he thought he knew about success, power, and what it truly means to be rich. This is a story of prejudice, redemption, and a truth so powerful it will change two lives forever. Before we dive into this incredible story, let us know what country you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more heartwarming stories every single day. Marcus Sterling stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his corner office, 60 floors above the city that never stopped moving. Below him, people looked like ants scurrying through concrete canyons, chasing dreams he'd already caught and left behind. "Mr. Sterling, your 9 o'clock is here," his assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. He didn't respond. He never did. She'd learned to enter after 30 seconds of silence. They always did. The Wall Street Journal sat on his desk, his face on the cover. Marcus Sterling, the man who never loses. They call him a genius, a titan, a force of nature in Italian leather shoes. What they didn't call him was happy. His reflection in the glass showed a man who'd forgotten how to smile without cameras present. At 45, Marcus had everything money could buy and nothing it couldn't. 3 ex-wives who'd signed NDAs. Children who called on birthdays out of obligation. A penthouse that echoed with expensive silence. Your father would be proud, people said at charity galas. But would he? Marcus's father, Robert Sterling, had been a factory worker with calloused hands and a warm heart. He'd saved every penny to send his son to business school, working double shifts until his body gave out at 58. "Never forget where you came from, son," his father had whispered in the hospital, gripping Marcus's hand. "Never forget that every person you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about." Marcus had nodded. He meant it then. But that was 20 years ago. 20 years of climbing, conquering, crushing competition. Somewhere along the way, he'd stopped seeing people and started seeing assets, obstacles, or irrelevance. His assistant entered, Jessica, or Jennifer, he could never remember, carrying his 3rd espresso of the morning. "The merger documents need your signature," she said softly. He signed without reading. Why read what lawyers were paid to perfect? "Anything else?" he asked, eyes already back on his phone. "The night cleaning staff, there was an incident report about." "Handle it," he interrupted. "That's what I pay you for." She left quietly. They all did. Marcus returned to the window, watching the sun climb higher over his empire. Sterling Industries. 12,000 employees. 42 countries. A legacy built on brilliance and ambition. But as he stood there, master of everything he surveyed, a strange feeling crept through him. Not guilt, not regret, something worse. Emptiness. His phone buzzed. Another meeting, another million, another meaningless milestone. Marcus grabbed his briefcase and headed for the door, never imagining that tonight, in this very building, his entire world would shatter because of a spilled cup of coffee and a man he'd never bothered to see. Little did Marcus know, the janitor who would change his life forever was already in the building, pushing his cart through hallways Marcus had walked 1,000 times but never truly seen. James Rivera pushed his cleaning cart through the marble corridors of Sterling Tower, his movements practiced and precise. At 67, his hands bore the marks of decades of honest work, but his eyes still sparkled with a kindness that age couldn't diminish. "Evening, Mr. Rivera," Marcus the security guard called out. Not Marcus Sterling. Marcus Johnson, who'd worked the night desk for 5 years and whose daughter's graduation James had attended last spring. "Evening, Marcus. How's Rachel enjoying college?" "Loves it, sir. Still talks about that card you gave her." James smiled. The card had been a handwritten note of encouragement and a $20 bill tucked inside. Not much, but it was what he could spare. He moved through the building like a ghost in reverse, invisible to most, but leaving everything better than he found it. He watered the forgotten plants by the back stairwell. He picked up the framed photo a junior analyst had dropped, setting it carefully on her desk. He left an encouraging sticky note on an intern's computer. Your presentation was excellent. Keep believing in yourself. Nobody saw him do these things. That wasn't why he did them. At 11 p.m., he took his break in the small staff room, pulling out a worn photo of his wife, Maria. 50 years of marriage, and she still made his heart race. But Parkinson's disease didn't care about love stories. The medications cost more than his pension could cover. That's why, after 30 years teaching high school history, he'd taken this night job. Dignity isn't in what you do, his mother had told him long ago. It's in how you do it. So James cleaned offices with the same care he'd once taught students about the American Revolution. Every task mattered because every task affected someone. He'd overheard conversations in this building that would make most people bitter. Executives complaining about six-figure bonuses being too small. Junior partners mocking service workers in the elevator. Just last week, someone had left their lunch trash deliberately on the floor with a note. That's what we pay them for. James had cleaned it without complaint, then prayed for that person to find peace. Don't you get angry? Maria asked him once. Anger is poison. I'd have to drink hoping someone else gets sick, he'd replied. I choose different. Tonight, he chose different as he cleaned the executive floor. The offices here could fit his entire house twice over. He cleaned each one with respect, never touching personal items, never reading documents left out. When he reached the corner office, the CEO's domain, he paused. The door was open, lights still on. Unusual. Mr. Sterling typically left hours ago. James knocked softly. Cleaning crew, sir. Should I come back? No answer. The office was empty, but papers covered the massive desk. James began his work quietly, carefully avoiding the important-looking documents. Then he saw it, a framed photo fallen behind the desk. Carefully, he retrieved it. A young Marcus Sterling with an older man in factory work clothes, both smiling genuinely, arms around each other. James studied the photo. Something in the older man's eyes reminded him of his own father. Pride mixed with exhaustion. Love wrapped in sacrifice. He set the photo back on the desk, perfectly positioned. Everyone's fighting a battle, James whispered to the empty room. He didn't know that in exactly 4 hours, he'd meet the man in that photo face to face. And that encounter would change both their lives forever. As James finished cleaning and headed toward his cart, Marcus Sterling's car was pulling into the parking garage, the billionaire returning for documents he'd forgotten, about to cross paths with destiny at 3 a.m. Marcus slammed his car door, fury radiating from every step. The merger documents were wrong. His lawyer's incompetence could cost millions. At 3 a.m., the building felt like a tomb, which matched his mood perfectly. The elevator ride to the 60th floor felt eternal. He burst into his office, startling the cleaning man inside. Out, Marcus snapped. James turned, cart already moving toward the door. Of course, sir. I was just finishing. I said out. James nodded respectfully and guided his cart through the doorway. But the wheels, old and slightly misaligned, caught on the threshold. The cart jerked. A container of cleaning solution tipped. It happened in slow motion. The bottle fell, bounced, hit Marcus's desk, and sent his extra-large coffee, the one he'd left there earlier, cascading across the merger documents. Brown liquid spread like a flood across weeks of work. Something inside Marcus shattered. You idiot. The words exploded from him like bullets. Do you have any idea what you just done? Weeks of work. Millions of dollars. James stood frozen, hands already reaching for paper towels. Sir, I'm so sorry. Let you what? Destroy more? Those documents are irreplaceable. Sir, please, I can help clean. You've helped enough. Marcus's face was red, veins bulging in his neck. Staff from other floors could probably hear him, but he didn't care. All the stress, all the pressure, all the emptiness erupted like a volcano. 3 years you've worked here? 3 years, and you can't even push a car through a door. James said nothing, standing with quiet dignity that somehow made Marcus angrier. What's your name? James Rivera, sir. Well, James Rivera, you're fired. Effective immediately. Security will escort you out. Leave your badge. Leave your cart. Leave now. The words hung in the air like poison. James looked at him, really looked at him, and in those eyes, Marcus saw something he couldn't name. Not anger, not fear, something worse. Pity. I understand, sir, James said quietly. I truly am sorry for the accident. I hope your evening gets better. He removed his badge, set on the desk carefully, and walked toward the door. I hope you find peace, James added softly, then left. Marcus stood alone in his coffee-stained office, breathing hard, hands shaking. From the doorway, his head of security had witnessed everything. Mike Chun, a former Marine who'd seen combat, looked at Marcus with barely concealed disgust. I'll escort him out, sir, Mike said coldly. Good. And make sure HR processes his termination first thing. Mike nodded, but said nothing. His silence spoke volumes. After he left, Marcus sank into his chair. The office felt different. Wrong. The coffee was already soaking through to his desk's wood surface. The documents were ruined, yes, but his assistant could get copies in the morning. So why did he feel like he'd just destroyed something far more valuable? He looked at the framed photo James had carefully positioned earlier, the one with his father. His dad's words came back. How you treat those who can do nothing for you reveals who you really are. Marcus pushed the thought away. The man had cost him time and money. He'd done what any CEO would do. Hadn't he? As Marcus tried to salvage the documents, he didn't notice the small note James had left earlier on his intern's desk. A note that would find its way to him tomorrow and reveal something that would haunt him forever. Marcus couldn't focus. He'd been staring at his computer screen for an hour, the same paragraph swimming before his eyes. The replacement documents had arrived by email, but his hands wouldn't move to open them. He kept seeing James's face. That look, that quiet dignity. I hope you find peace. Why had he said that? Why hadn't he argued, defended himself, shown even a hint of anger? Marcus stood abruptly, pacing his office. This was ridiculous. The man had cost him time and money. Justice was served. So why did he feel like the criminal? His phone showed 4:47 a.m. Sleep was impossible now. He grabbed his coat and left, passing Mike Chun at the security desk. The guard nodded but didn't speak. Marcus felt the judgment in that silence. Downtown, the city was just waking up. Marcus drove aimlessly, his penthouse feeling less appealing than the empty streets. He ended up at an all-night diner he hadn't visited in 20 years, the kind his father used to take him to. Coffee, he told the waitress. She brought it with a tired smile. Rough night. You could say that. Whatever it is, tomorrow's a new day. Simple words. Why do they hit so hard? Meanwhile, across the city, James walked through the pre-dawn cold. The bus wouldn't run for another hour, but he didn't mind. The walk gave him time to think and pray. Not for himself, for Marcus. That man is carrying something heavy, James said aloud, his breath fogging in the December air. Help him find his way. His phone rang. Maria, worried. Me amor. I'm fine, he assured her. Yes, I lost a job. No, don't worry. We'll figure it out. We always do. James, the insurance, my medications. We'll figure it out, he repeated firmly. Then, softer, how are you feeling? They talked for 20 minutes, James sharing not his worries, but his love. By the time they hung up, Maria was laughing about a memory from their honeymoon. James smiled. This moment of connection, this was wealth. He reached their modest apartment as dawn broke. Inside, he found Maria asleep in her chair, a photo album open on her lap. Pictures of their life, their wedding, their children's graduations, grandchildren's birthdays. Rich, James thought. We are so rich. He covered her with a blanket, kissed her forehead, and sat by the window watching the sunrise. Marcus watched the same sunrise from his penthouse, 20 miles away. Around him, designer furniture, original artwork, a view worth millions. He'd never felt more alone. His phone buzzed. His assistant, already working. Sir, the terminated employees file is on your desk. HR flagged something unusual. You might want to see it. Marcus ignored it. He poured another drink he didn't want, stared at a city he'd conquered, and wondered why victory tasted like ashes. The photo of his father seemed to watch him from across the room. I'm sorry, Dad. Marcus whispered to the empty penthouse. I don't know who I've become. No answer came. Just silence and the sunrise, indifferent to the inner war of a man who had everything except the one thing that mattered. At that exact moment, 6 blocks away, a car ran a red light, and Marcus's phone rang with news that would throw him into James's path once more, but this time as a witness to something that would shatter his world forever. Marcus's phone shattered the silence. His driver, Carlos. "Mr. Sterling, I'm so sorry. I'm sick. Food poisoning. I can't make it this morning." "Great. Another problem." "Fine. I'll drive myself." Marcus hadn't driven himself in 3 years. The Bentley felt foreign beneath his hands as he navigated toward the office for his crucial 9 a.m. merger meeting. Everything depended on this. Everything. He turned onto Fifth Avenue just as rush hour began. His mind wandered to James, to his father, to the growing feeling that something fundamental in his life was broken. Then he heard it. The screech of tires. The sickening crunch of metal. Screams. 50 yards ahead, a sedan had run a red light, striking a pedestrian in the crosswalk. The pedestrian flew through the air, landing hard on the pavement. The sedan sped away. Marcus slammed his brakes. Around him, people pulled out phones, filming. No one moved to help. "Someone call 911, a woman shouted. Everyone filming. No one helping. Marcus felt frozen, his hand on the door handle. He should help. Should do something. But the meeting, the merger, his phone showing 8:47 a.m. Then he saw movement. Someone was running toward the victim. A man in a simple coat, moving with purpose while everyone else stood paralyzed. The man dropped to his knees beside the victim, a young woman, maybe 25, bleeding from her head. He removed his coat, pressing it against her wound. "Someone call 911, the man shouted. "And you," he pointed at a bystander. "Flag down that police car." The voice. Marcus knew that voice. He stepped from his car, moving closer. Through the growing crowd, he saw him clearly. James Rivera. The janitor he'd fired 8 hours ago was now kneeling in the street, his coat soaked with a stranger's blood, directing the chaos with calm authority. "Stay with me," James told the young woman. "What's your name?" "Sarah," she whispered. "Sarah, you're gonna be okay. I'm James. I'm staying right here. Can you squeeze my hand?" "Good. That's good." Marcus stood 15 feet away, unnoticed in the crowd. He watched James check Sarah's pulse, elevate her legs, keep her talking, keep her conscious. "My mom," Sarah mumbled. "Someone tell my mom." "What's her number?" James already had his phone out, dialing as Sarah recited it. "Ma'am, your daughter Sarah has been in an accident. She's conscious, she's talking. We're at 5th and Broadway. Ambulance is coming. She's asking for you. She loves you." Sirens approached. James stayed with Sarah, holding her hand, keeping pressure on the wound, whispering reassurances. The paramedics arrived. "Sir, we got her. You probably saved her life." "Just doing what anyone should," James said, standing slowly. His coat was ruined, his work clothes stained with blood. "We need your name for the report," a paramedic said. "That's not necessary." "Sir." But James was already walking away, disappearing into the crowd before anyone could stop him. Marcus stood frozen, his mind reeling. The merger meeting forgotten. Everything forgotten except what he'd just witnessed. The janitor he'd destroyed last night. The man he'd called an idiot, had humiliated, had fired without thought. That man had just saved a stranger's life while everyone else, including Marcus, had stood by filming or frozen in fear. Who had James called an Uber for? Nobody. He'd been walking. Walking because he no longer had a job. Because of Marcus. Yet when someone needed help, James hadn't hesitated. Marcus looked at his watch. 8:58 a.m. The meeting started in 2 minutes. He pulled out his phone and did something he'd never done in 20 years of business. "Cancel the meeting," he told his assistant. Something important came up. "Sir, the merger. Cancel it. Reschedule. I don't care. There's something I need to understand." He hung up and stood in the street, watching the ambulance carry Sarah away, watching the crowd disperse, watching the space where James had knelt. And for the first time in decades, Marcus Sterling felt ashamed. Marcus rushed back to his office, demanding James Rivera's file from HR. What he discovered inside would reveal a truth so devastating it would bring him to his knees. Marcus burst into his office, ignoring his assistant's startled greeting. The file on James Rivera. Get it. Now. 3 minutes later, it sat before him. He opened it with trembling hands. James Eduardo Rivera. Age, 67. Position, night custodial staff. Years of service, 3. Marcus flipped through. Performance reviews, all exceptional. Exceeds expectations in every category. Most reliable employee on night shift. Goes above and beyond without being asked. Then he found the incident report from last year. His security chief, Mike Chun, had written it. On December 3rd, at approximately 2 a.m., Mr. Rivera discovered 3 individuals attempting to steal computer equipment from the 45th floor. Rather than simply reporting it, Mr. Rivera calmly approached them, spoke with them, and convinced them to leave. When they ran, one dropped a wallet. Mr. Rivera tracked down the young man, a homeless 19-year-old, and helped him apply for job training programs instead of pressing charges. Estimated value of equipment saved, $3.2 million. Mr. Rivera refused any reward or recognition. Marcus's hands shook. $3 million saved. No reward requested. He kept reading. Education. Master's degree in education. Columbia University, 1982. Marcus stopped breathing. A master's degree. From Columbia. Previous employment. History teacher, Lincoln High School, 1982 to 2012. 30 years. Why would a master's educated teacher with 3 decades of experience be working as a janitor? Marcus called HR. Why did James Rivera leave teaching? One moment, sir. Papers shuffling. His wife was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. His teacher's pension wasn't enough to cover her medical expenses. The note says he took this position because our health insurance covers specialized neurological care. The phone slipped from Marcus's hand. A teacher. 30 years of shaping young minds. Gave it up to clean toilets, so his sick wife could have proper medical care. Marcus opened his computer and searched James Rivera Teacher, Lincoln High. Articles appeared. Photos of James receiving teaching awards. Students' testimonies. Mr. Rivera changed my life. He stayed after school every day to help me pass. He used his own money to buy supplies for students who couldn't afford them. One video showed James at a retirement party, surrounded by former students. This man, one said tearfully, taught me that education isn't about memorizing facts. It's about understanding that every person has value and potential. Marcus couldn't breathe. He called Mike Chun, the janitor I fired last night. Tell me about him. A long pause. You really want to know, sir? Yes. James Rivera is the best human being I've ever met. Last winter, he found out one of our security guards was sleeping in his car because he couldn't afford rent. James let him stay in his basement, no charge, until the guy got back on his feet. He brings homemade lunch for the new employees who look lonely. He volunteers at a community center every weekend, teaching kids to read. Last month, he donated blood, even though he's terrified of needles, because we had a blood drive and needed donors. Mike's voice grew harder. And last night, you fired him over an accident. A good man who never complained, never asked for anything, just showed up and made everyone's life better. You want my opinion, sir? That was the worst decision you've ever made. The line went dead. Marcus sat in silence. Through his window, the city looked different. All these buildings, all these people. How many James Riveras walked among them, invisible to men like him? He thought about the accident this morning. While Marcus had frozen, calculating costs and time, James had run toward danger to save a stranger. Character isn't what you do when people are watching. It's what you do when no one will ever know. James had saved a life this morning. Saved company property last year. Saved struggling young men from criminal records. Saved students from giving up on themselves. And Marcus had screamed at him, humiliated him, destroyed his livelihood over spilled coffee. The successful merger documents sat on his desk. He'd rescheduled for tomorrow. It would cost the company millions in delays. He didn't care. There were more important things than money. His father had tried to teach him that. James lived it every day. And Marcus had 30 years of success, but couldn't remember the last time he genuinely helped another human being without calculating the return on investment. Marcus grabbed his coat with shaking hands. He had to find James, had to apologize, had to make this right. But what he didn't know was that James, at that very moment, was receiving devastating news that would change everything. Marcus sat alone as evening fell, his office door closed, phone silenced. The merger had been successfully rescheduled, tomorrow at 2 p.m. Everyone congratulated him on his shrewd negotiation tactics. The delay had actually improved their position. They thought he was a genius. He felt like a fraud. Before him lay James's file, the incident reports, the teaching awards. A life of service reduced to papers. A good man reduced to a termination notice. Marcus's reflection stared back at him from the darkened window. He barely recognized himself. When had it happened? When had he become the kind of man who valued documents over dignity? Who saw people as functions rather than souls? He thought back to his father's funeral. Robert Sterling had been buried in a simple casket, but the church had been packed. Factory workers, neighbors, people whose names Marcus never learned. Each with a story of how his father had helped them. Your dad lent me money when my daughter got sick. Wouldn't let me pay him back. Robert worked my shift when my wife was in labor. Refused overtime pay. He taught me to read when I was 40 years old. Never made me feel ashamed. Marcus had been proud that day. Proud of his father's legacy. When had he decided that legacy wasn't worth continuing? Business school? First promotion? First million? Or had it been slower? A gradual erosion of empathy replaced by ambition until he'd become the kind of man who screamed at a 67-year-old janitor over an accident? His phone buzzed. His mother. He'd been avoiding her calls. Marcus. Her voice was weak. She was 79 now, living in the same small house where he'd grown up. Hi, Mom. You sound troubled. Mothers always knew. I did something wrong. Something Dad would be ashamed of. Silence. Then, tell me. He did. All of it. The coffee, the firing, the things he'd said, the man he'd destroyed without thought. More silence. Marcus, do you remember what your father told you before he died? Never forget where I came from. That's only half of it. He said, never forget where you came from, and never stop seeing the person behind every face. He knew you were brilliant, honey. He knew you'd be successful. His only fear was that success would blind you to humanity. Marcus felt tears sting his eyes. It did, Mom. God help me, it did. Then fix it. Your father made mistakes too. But he always made them right. That's what defined him. Not perfection, but the courage to face his failures and change. After they hung up, Marcus walked to the photo of his father on the desk. Young Robert Sterling, arm around young Marcus, both smiling at a future full of promise. I'm sorry, Dad, Marcus whispered. I became everything you warned against. But I'm going to fix it. I don't know how, but I will. He pulled out his computer and searched for James's address. A modest apartment complex in Queens. Tomorrow morning, before the merger, he would go there. He would apologize. He would offer James a job back. No, something better. Director of something. Whatever he wanted. It wouldn't be enough. Money never was. But it was a start. Marcus looked around his office. The empire he'd built, the success he'd achieved. It all felt hollow now. Meaningless. What good was ruling the world if you'd lost your soul in the process? His father had died with nothing but love and legacy. Marcus had everything material, but felt spiritually bankrupt. That ended now. He stood, grabbed his coat, and made a decision. The merger could wait. Everything could wait. Some things were more important than business. Human dignity. Respect. The simple act of seeing another person and valuing their worth. James Rivera had taught him that without saying a word. Tomorrow, Marcus would become a student again. And this time, he'd learn the lessons that actually mattered. But as Marcus prepared to leave, his phone rang with an alert that made his blood run cold. James Rivera had just been admitted to Queens General Hospital. Emergency contact? None. Condition? Critical. Marcus's Bentley broke every speed limit to Queens General Hospital. His hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. Critical condition. The words repeated in his mind like a nightmare. He'd call the hospital. They wouldn't tell him anything. HIPAA regulations, patient privacy. He pulled strings, made calls, used his name and wealth to get past red tape. 20 minutes later, He stood at the nurse's station, breathing hard. James Rivera. I need to see him. The nurse checked her computer. Are you family? Marcus stopped. What was he? The man who destroyed James's life 12 hours ago? I'm his employer. Please. Mr. Rivera collapsed on the street. Severe dehydration, exhaustion, skipped medications. He's stable now, but very weak. Are you the one who fired him? The accusation in her eyes made Marcus flinch. Yes. Then maybe you should leave. Please. The word came out broken. Please let me see him. I need to apologize. The nurse studied him for a long moment. Room 347. His wife is with him. Be respectful. Marcus walked down the hallway on shaking legs. Through the window of room 347, he saw them. James, looking smaller in the hospital bed, for in his arm. Beside him, a woman in a wheelchair. Maria, he guessed, holding James's hand. Both smiling at each other like teenagers in love. Marcus couldn't move. James noticed him through the window. Their eyes met. Marcus expected anger, hatred, the door to close. Instead, James nodded. An invitation. Marcus entered like a man approaching judgment. Mr. Sterling, James said quietly. His voice was weak, but kind. I'm so sorry. The words tumbled out. I'm so deeply, terribly sorry. What I said, what I did, there's no excuse. I was cruel. I was wrong. I treated you like you were nothing when you're... Marcus's voice broke. When you're everything I should be, and I'm not. Maria watched him with fierce protective eyes. I saw what you did this morning, Marcus continued. The accident. You saved that woman's life. After I destroyed yours, you still ran to help a stranger. While I stood there frozen, calculating, being useless, you were being human. James started to speak, but Marcus raised his hand. I looked into your file. I know who you are. A teacher who gave up his career to care for his wife. A man who saved this company millions without asking for recognition. A man who sees value in everyone. Marcus's voice shook. I'm a billionaire who's never done anything as meaningful as what you do every single day. Mr. Sterling. Please call me Marcus. Marcus, James said gently. Sit down. You're trembling. Marcus sat. Up close, he could see the exhaustion in James's face. The dehydration had been caused by skipping meals to save money. The missed medications, he'd been rationing them, making them last longer. Because Marcus had fired him. This is my wife, Maria, James said. Mi amor, this is Mr. Sterling. The man who fired you? Maria's voice had steel in it. Yes, Marcus whispered. And I'm here to beg forgiveness and make it right. Make it right. Maria's eyes flashed. My husband collapsed in the street. Do you know why? Because after you fired him, he walked 6 miles home to save bus fare. Then walked another 4 miles to donate plasma for extra money. At 67 years old. Because his wife needs medication and we have no insurance now. Each word hit Marcus like a physical blow. I didn't know, he managed. You didn't care to know, Maria corrected. You saw Janitor. You didn't see James Eduardo Rivera, who taught inner-city kids for 30 years. Who worked 3 jobs to send our children to college. Who volunteers at homeless shelters on weekends. You saw a function, not a person. You're right. Marcus's voice barely worked. You're absolutely right. And I can't undo what I did. But please, let me try to make amends. Your insurance, I'll reinstate it immediately. Back pay, full benefits, a formal apology to the entire company. We don't want charity, Maria said. It's not charity. It's justice. And it's not enough, but it's a start. Marcus turned to James. You changed my life today. You showed me who I've become and who I should be. Please, let me learn from you. James looked at Maria. Some unspoken communication passed between them. Finally, James spoke. Marcus, every person you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Kindness costs nothing, but its value is immeasurable. You made a mistake. We all do. The question is, what will you do with this lesson? Marcus felt tears stream down his face, the first he'd cried in 20 years. I want to change, he said. Not just fix this, but become better, different. I want to honor my father's memory by actually living the values he taught me. He looked at James directly. Will you help me? Not as an employee, as a teacher, like you were for 30 years. Teach me what really matters. James smiled weakly. That's the first truly humble thing I've heard you say. Maria squeezed her husband's hand. James, your heart is too good. Perhaps, James said, but isn't that better than too hard? He looked at Marcus. I'll help you. But understand, this isn't about grand gestures or writing checks. It's about seeing people. Every person. Every day. I understand, Marcus said. Or I'm beginning to. They talked for an hour. James shared his philosophy, his life, his beliefs. Marcus listened like his life depended on it, because in a way it did. When visiting hours ended, Marcus stood to leave. Thank you, he said, for giving me a chance I don't deserve. Everyone deserves a chance to change, James replied. That's what makes us human. As Marcus left the hospital, he made a decision that would shock the entire business world. But first, he had one more thing to do, something that would require him to face his greatest fear, admitting his failures publicly. Marcus stood before the assembled board of Sterling Industries, every executive watching him with confusion. He'd called an emergency meeting, canceled the merger again, and refused to explain why. Ladies and gentlemen, Marcus began, his voice steady despite his racing heart. I've been your CEO for 15 years. In that time, we've tripled our revenue, expanded to 42 countries, and become an industry leader. Nods around the table. They expected a victory speech. And in that same time, I've failed you in the most fundamental way possible. Confused silence. I built a company that values profits over people, that sees employees as resources to be managed rather than human beings to be valued. And 3 nights ago, I demonstrated that failure in the worst possible way. He told him everything. The coffee incident, his cruelty, James's character, the accident, his own moral bankruptcy. I'm implementing immediate changes, Marcus continued. Effective today, we're raising minimum wage for all employees to $25 an hour. We're expanding healthcare coverage to include specialized care for chronic illnesses. We're creating advancement programs for custodial and service staff. And we're establishing the Sterling Rivera Foundation for working families with an initial endowment of $50 million. Marcus, his CFO, interrupted. That will cost us. I don't care what it costs, Marcus said firmly. What's the point of being profitable if we're morally bankrupt? What's the point of success if we achieve it by stepping on people's dignity? He looked around the table. My father was a factory worker. He taught me that character is built in how you treat those who can do nothing for you. I forgot that lesson. I became the kind of man he'd be ashamed of. That ends today. And if shareholders revolt, someone asked, then they can fire me, Marcus said simply. But I won't lead a company that doesn't value human dignity. Not anymore. The room erupted in debate. Some board members supported him. Others called him naive. The CFO threatened resignation. Marcus let them argue. When the noise died down, he spoke again. I'm also creating a new position, Director of Community Relations. This person will have direct access to me and veto power over any policy that prioritizes profit over people. I've already offered the position to someone, pending his recovery. Who? The COO asked. James Rivera, the janitor I fired. The teacher who gave up his career to care for his wife. The man who's demonstrated more leadership mopping floors than I have running this company. Some board members looked shocked. Others thoughtful. You're all welcome to vote me out, Marcus said. But this is who I am now. This is who Sterling Industries will be. We can be successful and ethical. Profitable and compassionate. My father built a foundation of integrity. I'm going to honor that. The vote was close, 7-5 in Marcus's favor. It was enough. 3 months later, Marcus stood in James's modest living room, reviewing foundation plans. James had recovered fully and accepted the position, not for the salary, but for the mission. The community center opens next month, James said, pointing to blueprints. Free tutoring, job training, healthcare navigation. Everything people need to build better lives. Marcus nodded. An employee advancement program? 12 people from custodial staff are now in management training. 8 more in college courses we're sponsoring. They become unlikely friends, the billionaire and the former janitor. Marcus visited weekly, always learning, always growing. How's Maria? Marcus asked. Better. The new medication is working. She actually cooked dinner last night. James's smile was radiant. Thank you, Marcus. For everything. I should be thanking you. You saved my life that night. Just not in the way I expected. They worked until evening, planning, dreaming, building something meaningful. As Marcus prepared to leave, James walked him to the door. You know what makes me proud? James said, not the foundation, not the programs. It's watching you greet the security guard by name now, asking the receptionist about her daughter, eating lunch in the employee cafeteria instead of your office. That's real change. Marcus smiled. I'm still learning, but I have a good teacher. We teach each other, James corrected. That's what friends do. Friends. Marcus had business associates, connections, networks. But friends? Real friends? James was the first in decades. As Marcus drove home that night, his phone rang with news that would test everything he'd learned. The merger partner had discovered his changes and was threatening to pull out, potentially costing Sterling Industries billions. The old Marcus would have caved immediately. But who was he now? 1 year later, Marcus stood at the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the Sterling Rivera Community Center. Children laughed in the playground. Parents attended job training workshops. Elderly residents received free medical screenings. The merger had fallen through. The board revolt had cost Sterling Industries 40% of its stock value. 3 major investors pulled out. Business magazines called it Sterling's spectacular fall. Marcus had never been happier. Ready? James asked beside him. Maria, in her wheelchair next to them, stronger now, smiling. Ready? Marcus confirmed. They cut the ribbon together. Applause erupted. A young woman approached. Sarah, the accident victim James had saved. She was fully recovered now, volunteering at the center. Mr. Rivera, she said, tears in her eyes. Thank you for saving my life. And thank you both for this. She gestured at the center. My mom starts her job training here next week. James hugged her. This is what community means. We save each other. Later, Marcus and James sat on a park bench, watching the sunset. Any regrets? James asked. Marcus considered. The company's smaller now. I'm not on magazine covers anymore. I'm worth half what I used to be. That doesn't answer my question. No regrets, Marcus said firmly. None. I'd rather be worth less and mean more. My father would understand that. He'd be proud, James said. They sat in comfortable silence. 2 men from different worlds who'd found common ground in humanity. Marcus's phone buzzed. His daughter, who he rarely heard from, was calling. Dad, I saw the news about the community center. I'm proud of you. You're becoming like Grandpa. Can we talk? Really talk? I'd love that, Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. After the call, he looked at James. How did you know? That day in the hospital. How did you know I could change? Because everyone can change, James said simply. The question is never can you. It's will you. You chose to. That's courage. As darkness fell, they remained on that bench, billionaire and teacher, employer and employee, but more than any of those things, friends. Marcus thought about his father's grave, which he now visited weekly. He thought about the man he'd been a year ago, successful but empty, and the man he was becoming, still successful but fulfilled. James, Marcus said quietly, thank you for seeing the person I could be when I couldn't see it myself. That's what we do for each other, James replied. We hold mirrors up to each other's souls and help each other become who we're meant to be. Maria joined them, James helping her from her wheelchair to the bench. You know what real wealth is? She said, looking at both men. It's this. Friendship. Purpose. Knowing you've made the world a little better. That's currency that never loses value. Marcus looked at the community center, lights glowing warmly in the darkness. Inside, lives were changing. Hope was growing. Dignity was being restored. A year ago, he fired a janitor over spilled coffee. Today, that janitor had taught him the most valuable lesson of his life. That every human being carries inherent worth that no job title, bank account, or social status can define. To second chances, Marcus said, raising his coffee cup. To seeing people, James added. To what really matters, Maria finished. They drank together as the stars emerged. Three souls bound by a journey from prejudice to understanding, from cruelty to compassion, from success to significance. Marcus thought of his father's final words. Never forget where you came from, and never stop seeing the person behind every face. He hadn't forgotten. Not anymore. And he never would again. Moral lesson. True wealth isn't measured by what you own, but by how you treat those who can offer you nothing in return. Every person you meet carries a story of struggle, dignity, and dreams. The moment you judge someone by their position rather than their character, you reveal not their poverty, but your own. Compassion, humility, and respect cost nothing. Yet they are the richest gifts one human can offer another. In the end, we are all equal in our humanity, and our legacy is written not in our bank statements, but in the lives we touch with kindness. Success without character is failure in disguise. But when we choose to see the humanity in everyone, to value dignity over dollars, to measure wealth by the love we give rather than the money we make, that's when we truly become rich.